Do you know that feeling where you really want to choose the best daycare or preschool for your precious baby to nurture their mind, body, heart, and soul, but you just don't know what to even look for or what's most important? Welcome to Worldly Families. I'm Justine Janae. Traveling to over 40 countries and living abroad has shown me that the mainstream American way of doing things is not always the best. I'm all about showing you new ways of being and doing so you can live and parent more intentionally and more joyfully. In this video, I'll give you a few guidelines for what to look for in a daycare or preschool for your young child. Tip 1, play-based. It's so important to foster play in children. It really is their job just to play, and kids learn through imaginative play with each other. That's why they learn how to interact with one another and what happens if I hit someone and what happens when I apologize. Kids tend to work out things that are on their mind or maybe even stressing them out through their imaginative play. And they'll tend to play the same kind of scene over and over again until they've really just worked it out of their system. Schools that focus on a play-based approach and really allow the time for children to be children are what you want to look for. Tip 2, nature-based. In Germany, it's very common for kids to attend forest schools. And these are schools where the kids basically play outside all day long. Kids go there until about the age of 7, and there are no fences, there's nothing keeping them in other than kids' own sense that they've developed of their own boundaries. So you'll see, 3-year-olds climbing maybe a tree this high, and then 7-year-olds will climb the tree that high. And they have a sense of what their limitations are because they've been allowed to experiment and fail a little and just really get in touch with nature and their bodies and their own abilities. If you can find a forest school in the US, kudos to you. If you can't, then the next best thing is just a really nature-based approach where your school emphasizes that they are trying to get the kids outside as much as possible. Even in the elements, bundle up, rain jackets, rain boots, whatever it is, play in the mud. That is my type of school. Tip 3, language immersion. Learning multiple languages at a young age has been proven over and over again to have significant benefits throughout the child's entire life. Not only does it help with their cognitive development, but it actually opens up whole new worlds to them of new people that they can meet and make connections with they may not have been able to without that language. We all know learning languages is much easier when your brain is in sponge mode as a little one than it is after the age of 7, and there's another cutoff after the age of 20, where the place in your brain where you learn language is actually different. Up till the age of 7, you can learn languages like a native speaker. If you can find a language immersion school where they're learning, for example, all day in Spanish or all day in French, the actual language doesn't matter as much as the fact that they're learning another language. Second best to that would be, for example, Waldorf. They are exposed to 2 languages. The Austin Waldorf School does German and Spanish, and they get it once or twice a week. Ideally, you'd find a school where your child could be learning in a separate language from what you're speaking at home all day long, like a true immersion. But if that's not available to you, then even language exposure at that age, especially hearing native speakers, will tune your child's ear to be able to hear that language even as an adult. Tip 4, mindfulness. Many daycares and preschools nowadays are teaching mindfulness even as young as 18 months old. I know that one daycare that we just toured for baby Onyx has a spirituality corner, and so they have a little area set up for yoga and mindfulness and just a moment of pausing and doing some calming breath work. That is an invaluable skill that I wish I had learned at that age. I'm working on it now, and always it's a continual practice, but imagine being essentially fluent in mindfulness. How amazing is that? Tip 5, socio-emotional learning. Schools are increasingly teaching socio-emotional learning, or SEL. So make sure that your daycare or preschool has an SEL curriculum and that they're focused on teaching children not just, especially at that age, not just about academics, but also about emotional intelligence and how to interact. Ask them what their discipline plan is and make sure that it includes talking things out and naming their emotions rather than just punishing the child for bad behavior. Tip 6, avoid academic rigor. Studies have shown that early academic rigor, like pre-literacy and pre-math, that are increasingly pushed on children at a younger and younger age in the US are detrimental to your children's mental health in adolescence and adulthood. Detrimental. So please try to avoid academic rigor at a young age. There is literally no advantage. The children who don't have pre-literacy and pre-math will catch up to the ones who do by the age of about 7 or 8. And then everything's a moot point, except that then the ones who had that have increasing anxiety and depression as teens and adults. Basically, don't stress your kids out. If you take a tour of a daycare or preschool and they are so proud of their academic rigor and their curriculum and college prep, run! Tip 7, avoid screens. Children really don't benefit from screen time, including things like Baby Einstein, which is basically just marketing that makes you feel like you're doing something beneficial for your kids, but it's not actually beneficial. There are tons of studies out there about this, and I used to be extremely strict on the anti-screens. I've loosened up over the years through the reality of parenting and, go kind of back and forth on it in waves, but for the most part, we try to avoid screens for 6 out of 7 days on the week. Saturdays, we do morning cartoons. In the Waldorf philosophy, they prohibit screens altogether until 6th grade. And Waldorf is heavily based on developmental psychology and when children are ready for things. Obviously, you're dealing with reality, and sometimes you do just need that easy way out. I get it, okay? No judgment. But as much as you can avoid it, do. And when you're sending your child to school, definitely make sure that you're not paying them to put your kid in front of a screen. Tip 8, be flexible. When my daughter was young, I was trying to find the perfect school that hit all these criteria, checked all these boxes, and it just didn't exist. You're not going to be able to find a school, most likely, if you do, tell me about it, that checks all of these boxes. There was a recent Wall Street Journal article talking about all of these studies that have done about the adverse effects of children's brains developing too fast. So really, all of these tips are geared toward helping your child be a child to the full extent of what that means. Playing outside, being in sponge mode, learning languages by interacting with people in that language, not this artificial academic setting where they're learning specific letters and numbers and pre-literacy and pre-math in this sort of rote way that we have in our schools, from kindergarten on. Protect your children from that. Let them play, preserve their childhood. There are 3 school models that I highly recommend from outside of the US that you can find all over the world. One is Reggio, Emilia, which is an Italian model. It really focuses on nature. Even the colors are kind of muted, natural colors that you would find outside. 2 is Waldorf, which is a German model, and that one really is focused on myth and storytelling and imagination and preserving the innocence of childhood. The 3rd model I recommend is Montessori, which is an Italian model of schooling that is student-led, and I love that it's chunked into age groups of 3 years at a time. So the children get to interact with each other in a more natural way, like you would outside when you're not in school that's artificially based on your age. And so the younger ones get to learn from the older ones get to act like leaders for the younger ones, and it just helps them develop that emotional competence. I hope these tips are helpful for you on your search for the best school, not the perfect school, but the best school you can find for your precious little one or ones. If you have any specific questions, please drop them in the comments below, and I'm happy to share my experience. Just to give you a little background on my personal experience with these, Autumn started in a Spanish immersion Reggio Emilia daycare at 14 months old, and she was there until 4 years old. At 4 years old, we moved up to North Austin, and she went to the Austin International School, where they teach 53% in French in order to get accredited by the Académie Française. And then the rest is in Spanish and English, half and half. So that was really cool, but and she was really learning the languages really well, but it was very heavy on the academic side, and for a 4-year-old, I felt like it was too stressful and it wasn't worth the trade-off of the language immersion. So we pulled her out of there and put her into Waldorf, where they still get language exposure about once or twice a week. They do Spanish and German, which is really cool. It's just not immersion all day long, but it was more focused on playing outside. There was this beautiful campus in Austin on several acres, and just, anti-screens and just preserving the innocence of childhood and that whole thing. She loved it. Then the pandemic hit, and so we pulled her out and eventually decided to put her into public school in Austin Independent School District, where she's in a dual language program. She does Spanish all day long, except for her specials, her electives, basically. PE, music, and art are all in English. And actually, they just changed math into English too, which not great, but I'll take it. And now we're looking into the Spanish immersion Montessori school that just opened a few years ago in Austin. We're very excited about that for baby Onyx. If you have any questions about any of these school models that I've talked about that I have experience with, or anything else, I've read a ton about the Finnish model of schooling and just education models all over the world, please drop them in the comments below and I will be happy to answer anything that I can. If this is providing value for you, please click like and subscribe and hit the bell to be notified every time I release a new video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.